The alarm bells rang through the crystal halls of the Galactic Council Station. Commander Zixita pressed his blue-scaled hand against the control panel as red lights flashed around him. His large yellow eyes stared at the scanner readings. With growing horror, something was coming from the dark edge of space, and it was not friendly. "How many ships?" asked his second officer, a thin creature with 4 arms and silver skin. The scanner showed numbers that made no sense. Hundreds of vessels moved in perfect formation toward the peaceful worlds of the galaxy. "Over 300. Confirmed contacts," Zixida replied. His voice shook slightly. In all his 40 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. The ships were huge, dark, and covered in weapons. They moved with purpose, like hunting beasts, stalking prey. The ships themselves looked wrong. Most civilized vessels were round and smooth, built for comfort and efficiency. These new ships had sharp edges and brutal lines. They looked like they were made for one purpose only: to kill. Zixidea opened a communication channel to the Council headquarters. "This is Scout Ship Morningstar. We have a Code Black situation. Okay. Unknown fleet approaching from Sector 7. Requesting immediate backup." The response came quickly. "Scout Ship Morningstar. This is Council Control. Are you certain of your readings? We have no record of any civilization in that region," confirmed Council Control. "The energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. These ships appear to be from a Class 12 world." Silence filled the communication channel. A Class 12 world was a death sentence. No intelligent life could possibly survive on such a hostile planet. The very idea was impossible. 3 hours later, Ambassador Krelvin stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council. His pale green face was tight with worry as he looked at the 12 species gathered in the Great Chamber. These beings had lived in peace for over 300 years. War was something from ancient history books. "Fellow members of the Council," Krelvin began, "we face a crisis beyond our understanding. An unknown fleet of massive size approaches our space. Early reports suggest they come from the Outer Rim, from a world that should not support life." A small, furry creature with large ears raised her hand. "Ambassador, surely you are mistaken. The Outer Rim contains only dead worlds and failed stars. Nothing lives there." Dr. Veltara, the Council's chief scientist, stepped forward. She was tall and thin, with smooth gray skin and wise old eyes. In her hands, she carried a data pad filled with disturbing information. "I have analyzed the preliminary scans," she said in her calm voice. "The energy patterns suggest advanced technology, but not technology as we understand it. These beings appear to have developed weapons designed for one purpose: maximum destruction." She touched the screen and a hologram appeared above the council table. The image showed one of the approaching ships in detail. It was massive, covered in armor plating and bristling with weapon ports. The very sight of it made several council members gasp in fear. "Notice the design," Dr. Veltara continued. "No windows for sightseeing, no comfortable curves, no gardens, or recreation areas. This is a ship built by beings who think only of war." An elderly member with blue-scaled skin and a long neck spoke up. "But how is this possible? Our records show that only garden worlds can produce intelligent life. Worlds create only beasts and monsters." "That is what we believed," Dr. Veltara replied. "But perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps somewhere in the galaxy, intelligence evolved, not despite hardship, but because of it." The thought sent chills through the chamber. Every member of the council came from peaceful worlds. Planets with gentle weather, abundant food, and no natural predators. Violence was something they had evolved past millions of years ago. Commander Zixtheda's voice crackled through the communication system. "Council. Control. The fleet has changed course. They're now heading directly for the Centauri colonies." Panic filled the chamber. The Centauri colonies were home to over 2 billion beings, had no defenses beyond basic asteroid deflection shields. If these unknown ships were truly hostile, it would be a massacre. Ambassador Krelvin stood again, his voice shaking. "We must evacuate the colonies immediately. All civilian ships in the area should retreat to safe distance." "But where can they go?" asked the small furry council member. If these beings are truly from a death world, they might follow our ships anywhere. Dr. Veltara touched her datapad again. I have been studying the intercepted communications. The language patterns are disturbing. They speak casually of concepts we eliminated from our societies long ago. Words that translate roughly to acceptable losses and necessary sacrifices. She paused, her face grave. Most disturbing of all, they appear to view death not as the ultimate failure, but as a tool. To achieve their goals? The council chamber fell silent. Death was the one thing that terrified all civilized beings above everything else. The idea that a species might actually choose death, might use it as a weapon, was beyond their understanding. A new voice entered the chamber through the communication system. It was Captain Hickstall of the Defense Fleet. Council, this is the DNV Peaceful Dawn. We are moving to intercept the unknown fleet. Our orders are to establish communication and determine their intentions. Captain, Ambassador Krelvin replied, you are authorized to use whatever means necessary to protect civilian populations. But please, try to avoid conflict if possible. Understood, Ambassador. However, I must report that our long-range sensors have detected weapons systems far beyond our current technology. If these beings choose to fight, our chances of victory are minimal. Dr. Veltara looked at her datapad one more time. The numbers were frightening. The unknown fleet outgunned the entire Council Defense Force by a factor of 10. Their ships were larger, faster, and apparently built for sustained combat. There is something else, she said quietly. The ships appear to be crewed by beings from a high-gravity world. Their bone density would be much greater than ours. Their muscles would be designed for constant struggle against crushing weight. Looked around the chamber at the peaceful faces of the council members. If they come from a true death world, they would be stronger, faster, and more durable than any of us. They would be natural predators. Small furry council member spoke. In a whisper, what do we do? How do we fight beings who were born in hell itself? Ambassador Krelvin closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, his face showed the weight of the decision he was about to make. We cannot fight them, he said slowly. We can only hope that they are reasonable beings who can be negotiated with. Send word to all colonies. Prepare for immediate evacuation. All military vessels are to maintain defensive positions only, and if they refuse to negotiate, asked the captain through the communication system. The ambassador looked around the chamber one final time. These peaceful beings had never known true fear before this day. They had lived their entire lives believing that intelligence and civilization were the same thing. Now they were about to learn that sometimes intelligence could evolve in the darkness between the stars. Then we pray to whatever gods will listen, he replied, because we are about to meet our superiors in the art of survival. The chamber fell silent as the reality of their situation settled over them. Somewhere in the cold depths of space, beings from a nightmare world were approaching with weapons they could not match, and minds they could not understand. The age of galactic peace was about to end, and none of them knew if they would survive what came next. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, staring at the view screen with a mix of excitement and concern. After 18 months in deep space, they had finally found what they were looking for: signs of intelligent alien life. Unfortunately, those signs came in the form of over 200 warships pointing directly at his exploration vessel. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the alien fleet, reported Chief Science Officer Dr. Lisa Barnes from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel as she analyzed the incoming data. Their technology appears to be several generations ahead of ours. Lieutenant Commander Alex Torres, the ship's tactical officer, looked up from his weapons console. They've got us surrounded. One count 237 vessels, all armed in an attack formation.
I recommend we raise shields and
arm all weapons systems. Jake nodded grimly. Do it. But keep weapons on standby only. We're explorers, not conquerors. Maybe we can talk our way out of this. The horizon shields flickered to life around the ship, creating a protective bubble of energy. It wasn't much against such overwhelming odds, but it was better than nothing. Jake had served in the Colonial Marines before joining the Exploration Corps, and his military training told him they were in serious trouble. Communications officer. Phillips, can you establish contact with the alien fleet? Jake asked. Nancy Phillips, a young woman with short brown hair and steady hands, worked frantically at her station. "I'm trying, Captain, but their communication systems are completely different from ours. The universal translator is having trouble making sense of their language patterns." On the alien flagship, Fleet Commander Vexcala stared at the human ship through his large compound eyes. The vessel was small compared to his mighty fleet, but something about it made his skin crawl with unease. It moved with purpose and showed no signs of fear despite being completely outnumbered. "Commander, the alien vessel has activated some kind of energy barrier," reported his tactical officer. "They also appear to have armed their weapon systems." Vexcala's mandibles clicked together in agitation. In his culture, raising shields was considered an act of aggression. The fact that these unknown beings had immediately prepared for battle confirmed his worst fears about their violent nature. "They are challenging us," he said in his clicking voice. "These Deathworld savages think they can intimidate the combined might of the Galactic Council, show them how wrong they are." Back on the horizon, Nancy Phillips suddenly straightened in her chair. "Captain, I'm getting something." Translator is starting to make sense of their signals. A harsh alien voice filled the bridge through the communication system. The words were broken and difficult to understand, but the meaning was clear. "Enough. Surrender. Deathworld. ... Violent species. Comply or be destroyed." Jake frowned as he listened to the garbled message. "Nancy, are you sure the translator is working correctly? Sounds like they're calling us violent." "The translation matrix is functioning within normal parameters," Nancy replied. "But Captain, I think there might be some kind of misunderstanding. Their language has concepts that don't translate well into English." Before Jake could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Alex Torres looked up from his tactical station with wide eyes. "Captain, the alien fleet is powering weapons. They're preparing to fire." Jake's military instincts kicked in immediately. "All hands, battle stations. Got an engineering. I need maximum power to shields. Tactical, prepare evasive maneuvers." In the engine room, Chief Engineer Pete Collins cursed as he saw the power readings spike. The Horizon was an exploration vessel, not a warship. Her engines and shields were designed for dealing with asteroid fields and solar storms, not military combat, against advanced alien technology. "Come on, baby," he muttered to the ship as he rerouted power from non-essential systems. "Don't let us down now." The first alien energy beams struck the Horizon's shields like hammer blows. The ship shook violently, throwing crew members against their stations. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits as the shields struggled to absorb the massive energy discharges. "Shields down to 60%, Alex reported through clenched teeth. "Captain, we can't take much more of this." Jake gripped his command chair as another barrage struck the ship. "Turn fire. Target their lead vessels. We can convince them we're not easy prey." The Horizon's weapons, designed primarily for clearing space debris, fired back at the alien fleet. The energy beams were weak compared to the aliens' weapons, but they were accurate. 3 alien ships took direct hits, their shields flaring. As they absorbed the impact on the alien flagship, Vexcala watched in amazement as the tiny human ship continued to fight despite overwhelming odds. Any civilized species would have surrendered by now, but these beings seemed determined to fight to the death. "Commander, the alien vessel is targeting our shield generators," his tactical officer reported. "Their weapon accuracy is remarkable for such a primitive species." Primitive. Vexcala clicked his mandibles in disbelief. No primitive species could maintain such precise targeting while under heavy fire. These beings are natural warriors. The battle continued for several minutes, with the Horizon taking increasingly heavy damage. Sections of the ship were vented to space as alien weapons punched through the weakening shields. In the medical bay, Dr. Karen Wright worked frantically to save wounded crew members while the ship shook around her. "Medical to bridge," she called over the communication system. "I've got 15 wounded down here, including 3 critical cases. We need to end this fight soon, or we're going to start losing people." Jake's face was grim as he watched his ship being torn apart around him. In the engine room, Pete Collins was performing miracles just to keep the power flowing. But even he couldn't work miracles forever. "Captain, the reactor is becoming unstable," Pete's voice crackled over the cum. Can hold it together for maybe 10 more minutes, but after that we're looking at a core breach. Security Chief Maria Santos, a tough woman with military scars. On her arms looked up from her damaged control station. Sir, we've lost life support on decks 4 and 5. Hull breaches are spreading faster than our repair teams can seal them. The aliens watched in growing horror as the human ship continued to fight, even as it was being destroyed around its crew. What kind of beings would choose death over surrender? In their peaceful culture, self-preservation was the highest virtue. The idea of deliberately choosing destruction was beyond their understanding. Suddenly, alarms began screaming throughout the Horizon's engine room. Pete Collins looked at his control panel and saw his worst nightmare. The reactor containment field was failing. He had maybe 2 minutes before the entire ship exploded in a nuclear fireball. Bridge, this is engineering, he called over the... Come, the reactor is going critical. I'm initiating emergency evacuation protocols. But Pete had no intention of evacuating. Instead, he began overriding the safety systems, manually adjusting the containment field to create the biggest explosion possible. If he was going to die, he was going to take some of these alien bastards with him. All hands abandoned ship. Jake's voice echoed through the corridors. This is not a drill. Repeat, all hands abandoned ship. The crew of the Horizon moved with practiced efficiency, despite the chaos around them. They had trained for this scenario, though none of them had ever expected to use that training. As the escape pods launched from the dying ship, Pete Collins worked alone in the engine room, fine-tuning his improvised weapon. Come and get some, he muttered as he watched 3 alien cruisers move in for the kill. The explosion, when it came, was visible from 1,000 kilometers away. The Horizon's reactor went critical, in a carefully controlled detonation that vaporized the ship and everything within a 5-kilometer radius. 3 alien cruisers disappeared in the fireball, while 2 others were heavily damaged by the blast. Wave. The alien fleet pulled back in shock. They had never seen anything like this. A being had deliberately chosen to die in order to inflict maximum damage on his enemies. The concept was so alien to their thinking that many of the alien commanders simply could not process what they had witnessed. In the escape pods, the surviving crew members watched their ship die with a mixture of grief and pride. They had been explorers on a mission of peace, but when forced to fight, they had proven that humanity would never go quietly into the dark. Maria? Santos looked around at her fellow survivors as their pods were captured by alien tractor beams. 18 crew members out of the original 43. The price of first contact had been higher than any of them had imagined. What happens now? Asked Dr. Barnes, as alien ships surrounded their escape pods. Maria's face was hard as stone. Now we show them what humans are really made of. Director Hicksonall sat in his sterile white office, staring at the data files spread across his desk. As head of the Galactic Council Intelligence Division, he had seen many strange things in his long career. But nothing had prepared him for what he was learning about the captured humans. The interrogation facility was located deep inside the Council's main station. Far from the peaceful gardens and crystal spires that most citizens saw, here, in rooms designed for comfort rather than intimidation, the surviving human crew members were being questioned about their species and their world. Dr. Meltora, the Council's leading expert on alien biology, entered the office, carrying a thick data pad. Her usually calm face showed signs of stress and confusion. She had been studying the human prisoners for 3 days. What she had learned challenged everything she knew about evolution and life itself. Director, you need to see this, she said, setting the data pad on his desk. The preliminary medical scans of the human prisoners are complete. The results are impossible. Hicksonall picked up the data pad with his four-fingered hand. As he read the medical data, his large black eyes grew wider with each line. The human's bone density was 3 times greater than any known intelligent species. Their muscle mass was designed for surviving and crushing gravity. Most shocking of all, their bodies showed signs of being adapted for violence. These beings have natural weapons, Dr. Meltora continued. Sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh. Dense bones that can be used as clubs. Fast reflexes that suggest they evolved as both predator and prey. Hicksonall set down the datapad and looked at his chief scientist. But that's impossible. Intelligent life evolves from cooperative species, not predators. Violence and intelligence cannot exist together. That's what we believed, Dr. Meltora replied, but perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps somewhere in the galaxy, intelligence evolved not from cooperation, but from competition. In the interrogation room, Security Chief Maria Santos sat across from Interrogator Kixfall, a tall alien with pale blue skin and gentle eyes. The room was designed to be comfortable, with soft lighting and pleasant temperatures. To the aliens, this was how all interactions should be conducted. "Please, tell us about your world," Kixfell said in his soft voice. The universal translator had been improved since the first contact disaster, and communication was now much clearer. Maria looked at the alien interrogator for a long moment. He seemed genuinely curious rather than hostile. She decided to answer his questions honestly. "Earth is a beautiful world," she began, "but it's also dangerous. We have storms that can destroy entire cities, earthquakes that can swallow buildings, diseases that can kill millions of people." Kixfell's face showed confusion. "But how do you survive? Why don't you leave such a hostile place?" "Because it's our home," Maria replied simply. "And leaving isn't always possible. Sometimes you have to stand and fight even when the odds are against you." The concept of fighting impossible odds was something the alien could not understand. In his culture, when faced with danger, the logical response was to retreat and find safety. The idea of deliberately staying in harm's way made no sense to him. "You mentioned diseases," Kixfell continued. "Surely your medical technology prevents such things?" Maria shook her head. "We've conquered many diseases, but new ones always appear. There was something called the Black Death that killed a third of Europe. The Spanish flu killed 50 million people worldwide. Even today, cancer and heart disease kill millions every year." The alien's face went pale. In his society, disease had been eliminated thousands of years ago. The idea that an intelligent species would accept such massive death tolls was horrifying. In another interrogation room, Dr. Lisa Barnes was being questioned by Dr. Valtara, the council xenobiologist. The two scientists had developed a strange kind of mutual respect despite the circumstances. Tell me about human warfare," Dr. Valtara asked. "Our records show that your species has been fighting each other for thousands of years." Lisa sighed as she thought about humanity's bloody history. "We've fought over everything: land resources, religion, ideology. The 20th century alone saw 2 world wars that killed over 100 million people." Thora Sands shook as she made notes, "But why? Why would an intelligent species deliberately kill its own kind?" "Because we disagree about things," Lisa replied. "Sometimes those disagreements become so strong that people are willing to die for what they believe in. But surely survival is more important than beliefs." Lisa looked at the alien scientist with sad eyes. "That's where you're wrong. For humans, some things are more important than survival. Honor, freedom, protecting the innocent. We'd rather die fighting for what's right than live as slaves." The concept of choosing death over submission was so alien too. Dr. Veltaris, thinking that she had to stop the interview and consult with her colleagues. How could any species consider abstract concepts more important than life itself? Back in Director Hicksonal's office, more disturbing reports were arriving. The intelligence division had been analyzing the wreckage of the human ship, and what they found challenged their understanding of technology and engineering. "The human vessel was not designed primarily for war," reported Chief Engineer Tixmar. "It was an exploration ship, built for long-range scientific missions. Yet it carried enough weapons to fight a small fleet." "But why would explorers need such weapons?" Hicksonal asked. "According to the prisoners, space is dangerous in their region of the galaxy. They encounter hostile environments, dangerous phenomena, and apparently other aggressive species. They arm their ships because they expect to be attacked." Dr. Meltora entered the office again, carrying more data. "Director, I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of the human prisoners. The results are disturbing." She activated a holographic display that showed brain scans of the human crew members. "Notice the enlarged areas associated with aggression, risk assessment, and rapid decision-making. These beings are literally built for combat. But they also show enlarged areas for empathy, cooperation, and abstract thinking, she continued. It's as if their evolution combined the traits of both predator and prey, warrior and philosopher. Hicksonall studied the brain scans with growing unease. What does this mean for our understanding of intelligence? It means we may have been wrong about everything, Dr. Meltora replied. We assumed that intelligence naturally led to peace. But what if intelligence can also evolve from conflict? What if the struggle for survival actually makes a species smarter and stronger? In the interrogation room, Maria Santos was describing human concepts that the translator struggled with. Words like courage, sacrifice, and honor had no direct equivalents in the alien languages. Why do humans fight when victory is impossible? Kixville asked. Maria thought for a moment before answering. Because someone has to. Because if we don't stand up to bullies and tyrants, who will? Because some things are worth dying for. But death is the end of everything, the alien protested. How can anything be worth that? Because we're not just individuals, Maria explained. We're part of something bigger. Family, community, species. When we fight, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who comes after us. The alien interrogator sat in stunned silence. The idea that beings would willingly sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts like justice or freedom was beyond his comprehension. Dr. Barnes, meanwhile, was explaining human exploration to Dr. Veltara. We explore because we need to know what's out there, even if it's dangerous, even if it might kill us. But why take such risks? The alien scientist asked. Because curiosity is stronger than fear, Lisa replied. We'd rather die trying to learn something new than live in ignorance. This statement terrified Dr. Veltara more than any weapon could. A species that valued knowledge over survival was beyond her ability to understand. Director Hicksonall called an emergency meeting of the Intelligence Division. The reports from the interrogations had painted a picture of humanity that challenged every assumption about intelligent life. These beings are not conquerors or raiders, he told his assembled staff. They're something far more dangerous. They're survivors who have learned to thrive in hell itself. Do you recommend? Asked Dr. Meltora. Hicksonall looked at the data one more time. Humans were stronger, faster, and more durable than any known species. They were natural warriors who accepted death as a part of life. They explored dangerous regions of space out of curiosity rather than necessity. I recommend we pray that they're as peaceful as they claim to be, he replied. Because if they ever decide we're a threat, there's nothing in the galaxy that could stop them. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They had captured 18 humans, but somewhere out there was an entire world full of these Deathworld survivors. And soon more of them would come looking for their missing people. The age of galactic peace was ending, and none of them knew what would replace it. Fleet Admiral Kickstar stood in the command center of the Combined Defense Station. Watching the holographic display with growing dread, the massive screen showed the outer edge of known space, where new contacts were appearing with alarming frequency. What the aliens thought was a full-scale invasion was actually something much more routine for humans, a rescue mission. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the human territory, reported his tactical officer, a nervous creature with 6 arms and orange skin. The fleet appears to be even larger than the first scouting force. Kickstar S. Compound eyes focused on the display. Dozens of new ships were emerging from hyperspace, their dark holes and aggressive designs matching the descriptions from the first encounter. To the aliens, this looked like the beginning of a genocidal war. How many ships? He asked, though he dreaded the answer. 73 confirmed contacts, with more appearing every hour, came the reply. Sir, they're moving directly toward our position at impossible speeds. What the aliens didn't understand was that the approaching fleet was led by Admiral Helen Carter aboard the UES Defiance. She was a career military officer with 30 years of experience, but she had never expected to be leading a search and rescue mission this far from human space. Communications. Any word from the horizon? Admiral Carter asked, as she stood on the bridge of her flagship. The Defiance was a heavy cruiser, one of humanity's most advanced warships, but it had been built for exploration and defense rather than conquest. Nothing since their last distress beacon, Admiral, replied Lieutenant Commander Frank Wilson from the communications station. But the signal definitely came from this sector. Admiral Carter studied the tactical display showing the alien fleet. Ahead of them, she had hoped for a peaceful first contact, but the aliens' aggressive positioning suggested they might be hostile. Still, her primary mission was clear: find the Horizon's crew and bring them home. Colonel Hayes, prepare your Marines for possible search and rescue operations, she ordered. We don't know what we're walking into, but our people might need help. Colonel Rick Hayes nodded grimly from his position near the tactical station. He was a veteran of several conflicts in the outer colonies, and he knew how quickly a rescue mission could turn into a battlefield. His Marines were ready for anything. Roger that, Admiral. Oh. My teams are standing by for immediate deployment. We'll get our people back. Unknown to the humans, their communications were being monitored by the alien fleet. The universal translators struggled with military terminology, turning routine commands into what sounded like preparation for mass slaughter. On the alien flagship, Fleet Admiral Kick Star listened to the intercepted transmissions with growing horror. The human admiral had just ordered something called Marines to prepare for immediate deployment. The words search and rescue translated poorly, coming across as hunt and extract. Admiral, the human commander is ordering her warriors to prepare for ground assault, his intelligence officer reported. They're also discussing something called acceptable losses and strategic objectives. Kickstar's mandibles clicked together in fear. The humans were planning to invade populated worlds, and they were already calculating how many civilians they were willing to kill. This confirmed every nightmare the Council had about Deathworld species. Send word to all Council member worlds. He ordered full military mobilization. Every ship, every defense platform, every weapon we have. If these monsters want a war, we'll give them one. Across the galaxy, species that had lived in peace for centuries began preparing for the first major war in their recorded history. The Vorthan Empire activated their ancient shield generators. The Kepler Federation powered up long-range missile platforms that hadn't been used in 300 years. Even the mysterious Andromedans emerged from their home systems with weapons that most species thought were legends. Dr. Veltara worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the Council station, trying to understand more about human psychology. The intercepted communications suggested a level of casual violence that terrified her scientific mind. Computer, analyze human military terminology, she commanded. Focus on the concepts they call acceptable losses and collateral damage. The computer's analysis was chilling. Humans planned for the deaths of their own soldiers as a normal part of military operations. They had terms for killing civilians that suggested it was an expected outcome of their warfare. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to view massive destruction as an acceptable price for achieving their goals. In the detention facility, the human prisoners were growing increasingly worried about their missing crewmates. Dr. Lisa Barnes had been trying to explain to her alien captors that humans weren't naturally aggressive, but her words weren't having the desired effect. You must understand, she told Dr. Veltara during their latest interview. We don't want to fight, but when our people are threatened, we will do whatever it takes to protect them, including the mass killing of innocents, Dr. Veltara asked, her voice shaking. Lisa stared at the alien scientist in confusion. What are you talking about? We would never deliberately harm civilians. But your military communications speak of acceptable losses and collateral damage, Dr. Veltara protested. These terms clearly refer to the planned killing of non-combatants. No, you don't understand, Lisa replied frantically. Acceptable losses means our own casualties that we're willing to accept to complete a mission. Collateral damage is accidental. Harm that we try to avoid. We have rules about protecting civilians. But the universal translator continued to struggle with these concepts. The aliens had no words for accidental harm during warfare because they had never experienced warfare. The idea that beings could kill without intending to was beyond their understanding. Meanwhile, Security Chief Maria Santos was dealing with her own interrogation session. The aliens wanted to know about human warrior culture and couldn't understand her explanations. You say humans fight to protect the weak, Interrogator Kixval said. But protection implies the strong dominating the weak. How is this different from conquest? Maria rubbed her temples, feeling frustrated by the communication barriers. It's completely different. Protection means standing between danger and those who can't defend themselves. Conquest means taking what belongs to others. But both involve the use of force against other beings, the alien pointed out. Yes, but the motivation is different, Maria explained. We use force to stop others from using force. It's about defending, not attacking. The concept of defensive violence was alien to Kixvel's thinking. In his peaceful society, any use of force was considered evil. The idea that violence could be used for good purposes was incomprehensible. Admiral Carter's fleet continued its approach toward the alien positions, following standard search and rescue protocols. Her ships maintained defensive formations while broadcasting friendship messages on all frequencies. 2. The humans. This was normal procedure for entering potentially hostile space. To the aliens, it looked like a carefully coordinated military advance. The human ships moved with precision that suggested extensive battle experience. Their weapons remained powered but not targeted, which the aliens interpreted as a threatening gesture. Admiral, the alien fleet is powering weapons, reported the tactical officer aboard the Defiance. They appear to be preparing for combat. Admiral Carter frowned as she studied the tactical display. Any response to our friendship messages? Negative, Admiral. They're not responding to any of our communications. Colonel Hayes stepped forward, his hand resting on his sidearm. Admiral, recommend we go to battle stations. If they want to fight, we should be ready for one. Not yet, Colonel, Admiral Carter replied. We're here to rescue our people, not start a war. Continue broadcasting peaceful intentions. But the aliens misinterpreted even this restraint as tactical cunning. In their minds, the humans were deliberately avoiding communication to maintain the element of surprise. Fleet. Admiral Kickstar watched the human advance with growing desperation. His fleet was outnumbered 3-1, and intelligence reports suggested the human ships were individually superior to anything in the Council Navy. Sir, the human fleet has entered weapons range, his tactical officer reported. They're maintaining formation but haven't opened fire. They're toying with us, Kickstar muttered. They want us to make the first move so they can claim self-defense. When they destroy us, the stage was set for a catastrophic battle between two species who fundamentally misunderstood each other. The humans saw potentially hostile aliens who had attacked an exploration vessel. The aliens saw Deathworld predators preparing to devour the galaxy. Both sides prepared for a war that neither truly wanted, driven by fear and misunderstanding rather than genuine hostility. The peaceful universe was about to learn what human military doctrine could accomplish when applied with full force in the detention facility. The human prisoners felt the station's defenses powering up around them. Maria Santos looked at her fellow survivors with grim determination. Sounds like the cavalry has arrived, she said quietly. Think they'll be able to get us out of this? Asked Dr. Barnes. Maria's smile was sharp as a blade. Lady, you obviously don't know much about human rescue operations. The first shots of the battle came from the alien fleet. Fleet Admiral Kickstar, convinced that the humans were preparing to destroy his people, gave the order to fire first. Hundreds of energy beams lanced across space toward Admiral Carter's rescue fleet. It's all ships, evasive maneuvers, Admiral Carter commanded as the bridge of the Defiance shook under enemy fire. Return fire, but target weapons and engines only. We're here to rescue our people, not commit genocide. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, their ships dancing between the alien energy beams like deadly ballet dancers. Years of fighting. Pirates and hostile aliens in the outer colonies had taught them how to survive against overwhelming odds. Captain Danny Rodriguez aboard the UES Intrepid led his destroyer squadron in a flanking maneuver that the aliens never saw coming. Ships moved fast and low, using the gravity well of a nearby moon to mask their approach. Target their command ship's weapon systems, Rodriguez ordered his tactical officer. Let's see if we can convince them to talk instead of fight. The Intrepid's weapons struck the alien flagship with surgical precision, disabling 3 weapon arrays without causing major hull damage. It was a display of accuracy that amazed the alien observers. Commander, Kate Sullivan's destroyer squadron attacked from the opposite flank, their smaller ships moving too fast for the alien weapons to track effectively. Her vessels struck like angry hornets, hitting weapon systems and shield generators before disappearing back into the void. "These humans fight like demons," muttered Tactical Officer Vexstar aboard the alien flagship. "They're everywhere at once, hitting us where we're weakest." But it was the human response to casualties that truly shocked the alien observers. When the U's Valor took a direct hit that crippled her engines, the crew didn't abandon ship as any civilized species would. Instead, they continued fighting from auxiliary control stations. Captain Miller to all stations came the voice over the ship's communication system. "We've lost main power, but we're not out of this fight. Switch to emergency batteries and keep those guns firing." Engineering Chief Tony Miller was trapped in a sealed compartment when the ship's life support failed. Instead of trying to save himself, he used his remaining air to manually reroute power to the weapon systems. His last act was to give his ship one final chance to fight. Dr. Veltara watched the battle from the observation deck of the council station, her face pale with shock. She had studied the human prisoners for days, but seeing their species in actual combat was a revelation that changed everything she thought she knew about intelligence and civilization. "They're not monsters," she whispered to herself as she watched human medics risk their lives to rescue wounded aliens during a brief pause in the fighting. "They're people willing to die for each other." The realization hit her like a physical blow. These beings weren't conquering savages from a death world. They were a species that had learned to find strength in sacrifice, courage in the face of death, and hope in impossible situations. Meanwhile, in the detention facility, Dr. Lisa Barnes had been working frantically to establish better communication with her captors. The universal translator had been upgraded again, and she could finally explain concepts that had been lost in translation. "Please, you have to listen to me," she told Dr. Veltara through the communication system. "My people aren't here to conquer anyone. They're here to rescue us. That's what humans do. We never leave our own behind." Dr. Veltara looked at the human scientist with new understanding. "You mean they're fighting and dying just to save 18 people?" "Of course they are," Lisa replied. "Every life matters to us. Every person has value. We would rather die trying to save one person than live knowing we abandoned them." The concept was so alien to Dr. Veltara's thinking that she had to sit down. An entire fleet risking destruction to save a handful of individuals. It was madness by the standards of her peaceful civilization, but it was also something beautiful and terrible. "The word you use," Dr. Veltara said slowly. "Friends." "Our translator doesn't have a direct equivalent." "What does it mean?" Lisa thought for a moment before answering. "It means people you care about, people you would risk everything to protect. People who matter to you more than your own safety." On the battlefield, the fighting was becoming more intense. The alien fleet had superior numbers, but the human ships were proving nearly impossible to pin down. Every time the aliens thought they had a target, humans would vanish into the darkness and strike from a different angle. Admiral Carter watched the tactical display with growing concern. Her ships were holding their own, but they were taking damage. More importantly, they still hadn't located the missing crew of the Horizon. "Communications? Any word from our people?" she asked. "Nothing yet, Admiral," Lieutenant Commander Wilson replied.
But I'm detecting a large structure in the
"Asteroid field. Could be where they're holding our crew." "Colonel Hayes, prepare your Marines for boarding action," Admiral Carter ordered. "We're going to get our people back." The breakthrough came when Dr. Veltara managed to establish direct communication with Admiral Carter. Using the improved translation system, she was able to explain the tragic misunderstanding that had led to the battle. "Admiral Carter, please listen to me." Dr. Veltara's voice crackled over the communication system. "There's been a terrible mistake. We thought you were invaders, but your people have explained that you came to rescue your crew." Admiral Carter's voice was cautious but hopeful. "Are you saying you're holding survivors from the UES Horizon? As 18 of your people are safe aboard our station. They've been trying to explain that humans are not the monsters we believe them to be." The fighting began to slow, as both sides realized that they were destroying each other over a misunderstanding. Admiral Carter ordered her ships to cease fire, and slowly the alien fleet did the same. This is Admiral Carter to all human vessels. She announced, "Weapons hold. Repeat, weapons hold. We may have a chance to end this peacefully." Fleet Admiral Kickstar listened to the human communications with amazement. Even in the middle of a battle they were winning, the humans were willing to stop fighting if it meant avoiding unnecessary death. Dr. Lisa Barnes was brought to the communication center, where she was finally able to speak directly to Admiral Carter. The reunion was emotional, even through the static of the communication system. "Admiral, this is Dr. Barnes. The crew of the Horizon is alive. But Admiral, these people aren't our enemies. They're just scared. They've lived in peace for so long that they can't understand why anyone would fight." "Understood, Doctor," Admiral Carter replied. "Are you and the others injured?" "We're fine, Admiral, but please, we need to talk to them. Help them understand that we're not the monsters they think we are." The next few hours were spent in careful negotiations. Dr. Veltara and Dr. Barnes worked together to establish better communication between the two species. Slowly, the truth began to emerge. The aliens learned that humans had not come to conquer the galaxy. They were explorers seeking knowledge and new friends among the stars. The humans learned that the galaxy was filled with peaceful species who had forgotten how to fight and were terrified by the very concept of violence. Colonel Hayes and his Marines were allowed to dock with the Council Station under heavy guard. When they were reunited with the survivors of the Horizon, there were tears and embraces that the alien observers found deeply moving. "This is what humans call love," Maria Santos explained to Interrogator Kixfell as she watched the reunion. "We care about each other so much that we're willing to risk everything to keep each other safe." The final negotiations took place in the council chambers. With representatives from both species working to establish a new relationship, Admiral Carter and Ambassador Krelvin sat across from each other, trying to bridge the gap between two very different ways of thinking. "We understand that our species frightens you," Admiral Carter said. "We evolved on a dangerous world, and violence is part of our nature. But we only use that violence to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Ambassador Krelvin nodded. "Slowly, and we understand that you see us as weak, because we have forgotten how to fight. But perhaps that is why the universe brought us together. You can teach us to be strong, and we can teach you to be peaceful." The agreement that emerged from those talks changed the galaxy forever. Humans would help defend the peaceful species from external threats, while the aliens would share their advanced technology and knowledge with humanity. Earth became the unofficial military academy of the galaxy, training defenders for a universe that had forgotten the necessity of strength. Human ships began patrolling the Outer Rim, protecting trade routes and colony worlds from the dangers that lurked in the darkness between stars. But perhaps more importantly, humans and aliens began to learn from each other. The aliens discovered that strength and compassion could exist together, while humans learned that peace was not the same as weakness. The final scene of the crisis showed human and alien crews working together aboard joint vessels. The galaxy had gained protectors it never knew it needed, while humanity had found a purpose worthy of their hard-won strength, not conquest, but guardianship of all life among the stars.